I sat frozen in the corner of the HR office, watching my best friend Callie fight for her dignity. She told them everything. How Vincent Cole cornered her during that late-night project. How she said no over and over. How he wouldn't stop touching her, whispering disgusting things in her ear. Her voice shook as she described his hands, his breath, the way he trapped her against the wall. My boss Quinn leaned back in his leather chair, arms crossed. The HR manager Angie shuffled papers, avoiding eye contact. When Callie finished, silence filled the room like poison. Then Quinn smiled, that cold smile I knew too well. "We can't ruin a man's career over a misunderstanding," he said, his voice calm and dismissive. "Vincent is our top performer. He brings in millions. Maybe you misread the situation." Callie's face went white. "Misread," she whispered. "He assaulted me." Angie cleared her throat. "These things can be complicated. Sometimes what we think happened isn't what really happened. Stress can make us imagine things." I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to shake them until they listened. But I sat there like a coward, watching them destroy her. The predator walked free that day. My friend walked out broken. That night I found Callie in her apartment, sitting on the floor surrounded by crumpled tissues. Her resignation letter lay on the coffee table, the ink smeared from her tears. She looked up at me with hollow eyes. "They think I'm lying," she whispered. "My own company thinks I made it up." I knelt beside her, pulling her into my arms. "We'll fight this. We'll find another way." She shook her head. "Look at this." She handed me her phone, social media posts from the office party last week. Vincent's arm around different women, everyone smiling, laughing. "They'll say I wanted it. They'll say I led him on." Her hands trembled as she signed the resignation letter. "I can't stay there. I can't see him every day, knowing what he did, knowing they chose him over me." I tried to be strong for her, but guilt ate at my stomach. I should have spoken up in that meeting. I should have fought harder. Instead, I watched her pack her career, her dreams, her future into a cardboard box. "I'm so tired," she said, staring at nothing. "I just want it all to stop." 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 2 a.m. Callie's sister, her voice broken. "She's gone. I found her this morning." The words hit a truck. I dropped the phone, fell to my knees, and screamed until my throat was raw. My best friend was dead. The girl who shared her lunch with me every day, who stayed up all night helping me study, who believed in justice and fairness and doing the right thing. They hadn't just ruined her career, they had taken her life. At the funeral, I watched her parents sob over her casket. Her little nephew asked why Aunt Callie was sleeping. I stood in the back, rage burning in my chest like acid. Vincent sent flowers, beautiful white roses with a card that read, "So sorry for your loss." Quinn attended the service, shaking hands and offering empty condolences. Angie posted about mental health awareness on LinkedIn. They all pretended to care. They all acted shocked. But I knew the truth. They killed her as surely as if they had pushed her off a bridge. I made a promise at her grave that day. If no one else would fight for her, I would. The next morning, I walked into the office and straight to Quinn's desk. He was typing an email, probably about quarterly projections or some other meaningless garbage. I set my employee badge down next to his coffee cup. "I'm done," I said. He barely glanced up. 2 weeks' notice is standard." "No, I'm done right now." I cleaned out my desk while everyone pretended not to watch. Pictures of Callie and me at company events. The mug she gave me for my birthday. A plant she helped me pick out. Everything went into a cardboard box. Vincent walked by as I packed. He had the nerve to stop, to put on that fake, concerned face. "I heard about Callie. Such a tragedy. If there's anything I can do." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Stay away from me." He shrugged and walked away, already forgetting her name. I left that building with nothing but a box and a burning need for justice. They thought it was over. They thought they had won. They were wrong. I disappeared into the background of the city. Coffee shops, bookstores, odd jobs that paid cash. To everyone who knew me before, I was a failure. The girl who couldn't handle the corporate world, who gave up after her friend's breakdown. But I had a different plan. I rented a tiny apartment across town and filled it with everything I could find about Quinn, Vincent, and Angie. Newspaper articles about their promotions, LinkedIn updates about their achievements, photos from company events where they smiled and celebrated while Callie's desk sat empty. I tracked their every move, Quinn got promoted to VP. Vincent won Salesman of the Year. Angie was featured in a magazine article about workplace wellness. They thrived while Callie rotted in the ground. Every night, I sat on my floor, surrounded by their faces, their lies, their success built on my friend's grave. I memorized their schedules, their habits, their weaknesses. People think revenge is hot and fast like in the movies, but real revenge is cold, patient. It takes years to build and seconds to deploy. I had time. Callie had all the time in the world now. During the day, I was invisible. At night, I became someone else. I started going to bars, corporate hangouts where men in suits thought they could take advantage of drunk women. I would sit alone, pretend to be tipsy, and wait. When they approached, when they got too close, when their hands wandered where they shouldn't, I would snap awake, stone sober, sharp as a knife. "What did you just do?" I would ask, my voice cutting through their alcohol-soaked confidence. They would stammer, make excuses, claim it was an accident. I would tear through every pathetic defense until they scattered like roaches. It wasn't about them. It was training, practice for the conversations I would have one day with the men who destroyed Callie. I learned how predators think, how they justify their actions, how they crumble when someone fights back. I got good at it. Very good. Each confrontation was a rehearsal for the war I was preparing to fight. A war Callie couldn't fight anymore, but I could. I would carry her voice, her strength, her demand for justice into every battle. 2 years passed. I worked at a small coffee shop near the financial district, invisible in my apron and name tag. Customers barely looked at me as they ordered their lattes and complained about their busy lives. One afternoon, a group of young professionals sat at the corner table, their voices loud and excited. They were talking about a big merger, a celebration party, new partnerships that would make them rich. Then I heard a familiar name. Vincent Cole. My hands froze on the espresso machine. Coffee grounds spilled across the counter as I strained to listen. "He's incredible," one of them said. "Brought in the biggest deal in company history. They're throwing him a huge party next month. Guy's basically untouchable now." Untouchable. The word echoed in my head as I cleaned up the mess I'd made. Vincent was still climbing, still winning, still protected by the same system that had failed Callie. That night, I pulled out the box I kept hidden under my bed. Photos of Callie, copies of her complaint, recordings I'd made of our conversations about that terrible day. The fragments of a life stolen too soon. I spread everything across my floor and felt something wake up inside me. Something that had been sleeping for 2 years. It was time. My first target was Angie, the HR manager who had called Callie's assault a misunderstanding. I found her at a networking mixer downtown, wine glass in hand, talking about diversity initiatives with other corporate executives. I walked up to her table, smile bright and friendly. "Angie, I don't know if you remember me. I used to work with Callie." Her face went pale. She remembered. "I was just thinking about that day in your office," I continued, my voice sweet as poison. "When Callie told you about Vincent, when she begged you to help her. Do you remember what you said?" Angie's wine glass trembled in her hand. That was a long time ago. You told her she imagined it. You told her stress could make people think things that weren't real. But Vincent was real, wasn't he? His hands were real. Her pain was real. The conversations around us died. People stared. Angie's networking partners looked confused and uncomfortable. "Do you still sleep at night?" I asked. "Or do you see her face when you close your eyes?" She mumbled an excuse and fled to the bathroom. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Angie had sent me a friend request. Step 1 was complete. She was scared. Next, I reached out to an old colleague named Tom. He had been Callie's work partner on several projects, someone she trusted, someone who witnessed Vincent's behavior but stayed quiet to protect his own career. I suggested we meet for coffee to catch up. He agreed, probably curious about what happened to me after I disappeared. We sat in a busy cafe, and I let him talk first. He rambled about his promotion, his new house, his perfect life. Then I mentioned Callie's name. His face changed. The confident smile faded. "I think about her sometimes," he said, looking down at his coffee. "What happened was unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" I kept my voice calm. "She was assaulted by Vincent and you knew it. You saw how he treated women in the office, but you said nothing." Tom shifted in his seat. I had a family to think about, kids to feed. I couldn't just throw away my career for. For what? For the truth? For justice? For Callie's life? He couldn't meet my eyes. Look, I feel bad about what happened, but there was nothing I could do. Vincent was too powerful, too connected. Going against him would have been suicide. His confession wouldn't save him from what was coming. But it would serve me well when the time came to reveal everything. I started attending industry events, always staying in the background, always watching. Quinn had grown more powerful over the years. His hair was grayer, his suits more expensive, his arrogance stronger than ever. At a conference about corporate leadership, I sat in the back row and watched him give a presentation about building trust in the workplace. The irony burned my throat. He talked about creating safe spaces for employees, about the importance of listening and believing, about zero tolerance for harassment. The audience applauded. They had no idea they were clapping for a man who protected predators and silenced victims. After his speech, people surrounded him with praise. Inspiring, they said. A true leader. If only they knew about the young woman who died because of his choices. I stayed until the crowd thinned, then approached him. He looked at me blankly, clearly not remembering who I was. Great speech, I said. Very moving. He smiled that politician smile. Thank you. Always important to discuss these issues. Absolutely. We can't let people like Vincent Cole get away with hurting others. His smile flickered, just for a second. But I caught it. He remembered now. I engineered a meeting with Vincent at another networking event. I wore a different outfit, styled my hair differently, presented myself as someone new in the industry. He took the bait immediately. Vincent Cole, he said, extending his hand with that practiced charm. Haven't seen you around before. Just moved here from Seattle, I lied smoothly. I've heard amazing things about your work. His chest puffed with pride. For the next hour, he bragged about his deals, his connections, his success. He bought me drinks and moved closer with each one, his hand touching my arm, my shoulder, my back. I let him talk, let him reveal his true nature. The way he described his female colleagues as assets to be managed. How he joked about breaking in new hires. The casual way he dismissed harassment complaints as women being dramatic. Between you and me, he said, leaning close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne, most of these girls want the attention. They just regret it later. I smiled and nodded, recording every word on the device hidden in my purse. Callie's voice echoed in my memory, telling me about his hands, his whispers, his violence. Soon, everyone would hear his true thoughts about women like my best friend. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Callie's voice from our last conversation, 3 days before she died. I feel like I'm disappearing, she had said. Like I'm becoming invisible, piece by piece. I got up and played the voicemail she left me the night before she took her own life. I'd listened to it hundreds of times, but it still cut like glass. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough, her voice whispered from my phone. I'm sorry I let them win, but I can't carry this anymore. It's too heavy. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the evidence I'd been collecting for years. Photos, recordings, documents, testimonies. A mountain of proof that would destroy the people who killed her. But doubt crept in. Was I becoming like them? Obsessed with power and control? Was this mission consuming me the way their cruelty consumed Callie? I touched the screen where her contact photo smiled back at me. That beautiful, trusting face that believed the world was fair. I won't stop, I whispered to her image. I won't let them forget what they did to you. The doubt passed. Justice isn't revenge, it's balance. It's truth. I began planting seeds of doubt in their professional circles. Anonymous tips to journalists about Vincent's behavior. Mysterious emails to board members asking uncomfortable questions. Carefully worded concerns shared with their clients and partners. Nothing traceable, nothing that could lead back to me. But enough to make people whisper. At first, they dismissed it as office gossip, jealous competitors trying to tear them down. But as the whispers grew louder, cracks appeared in their confidence. Quinn started snapping at his staff, paranoid that someone was spreading rumors. Angie hired a reputation management company to monitor her online presence. Vincent began looking over his shoulder at company events, wondering who was watching. They knew something was wrong, but they couldn't identify the threat. They had made so many enemies over the years, hurt so many people, that the suspects were endless. I watched their growing fear with cold satisfaction. This was how Callie felt every day after they had destroyed her. Anxious, paranoid, wondering when the next attack would come. The difference was, their fear was justified. I was coming for them. 6 months of careful preparation led to this. Vincent was being honored at the annual Industry Excellence Awards, a black tie gala celebrating the brightest leaders in corporate America. The invitation arrived in his LinkedIn messages, along with hundreds of others congratulating him on the recognition. He would be giving a speech about integrity and leadership. The irony was perfect. I spent weeks preparing for that night. I gathered every piece of evidence I had collected over the years and organized it into a devastating presentation. Photos from Callie's funeral, next to images of Vincent celebrating at office parties. Recordings of his crude comments about women. Copies of Callie's harassment complaint and the dismissive responses from HR. I also prepared backup plans, timed emails that would send automatically if something happened to me. USB drives hidden in safety deposit boxes. Friends who would release everything if I disappeared. No matter what happened that night, the truth would come out. I bought a black dress that made me feel invisible and powerful at the same time. I practiced my speech in the mirror, imagining Callie standing beside me, giving me strength. "This is for you," I told her reflection. Finally. The night of the gala arrived like a storm I'd been tracking for years. I stood outside the luxury hotel, watching black cars drop off executives and their wives. Champagne glasses sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Laughter echoed across the marble lobby. I walked through those doors with my heart pounding like thunder, but my face calm as still water. The invitation I'd forged got me past security. The fake name badge made me anonymous in a sea of networking strangers. I found Vincent near the bar, surrounded by admirers who hung on his every word. He was telling a story about closing a difficult deal, gesturing with his whiskey glass, his wedding ring catching the light. His wife stood beside him, smiling proudly at the man she thought she married. She had no idea what kind of monster she shared a bed with. I circled the room, identifying key players. Journalists from trade publications, board members from major companies, social media influencers who could spread a story in minutes. Everyone who needed to see Vincent's true face was here. Everyone who could make sure he never hurt anyone again. The trap was set. Now I just had to spring it. I found Vincent alone in a quiet hallway, checking his phone before his big speech. The confident smile faded when he saw my face. "I know you," he said slowly. "Callie's friend, the one who quit." I dropped the mask I'd worn for years. No more fake smiles or pretending to be someone else. "Her name was Callie," I said, my voice steady and cold. "She was 26 years old. She loved her job until you destroyed it. She trusted the system until you broke her faith in everything good." His face twisted with annoyance. "Look, what happened to Callie was unfortunate, but she was unstable. Everyone knew it. She couldn't handle the pressure of corporate life. She could handle the pressure. She couldn't handle you forcing yourself on her. She couldn't handle being called a liar by people she trusted." Vincent glanced around nervously, making sure no one could hear us. "You need to let this go. It was years-shent history." I stepped closer. "Tonight, everyone will know what you really are. Tonight, Callie's story finally gets told." The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing. You have nothing." I smiled, thinking of the USB drive in my purse, loaded with enough evidence to destroy him completely. "We'll see." Quinn appeared at the end of the hallway, his face red with anger. He must have spotted me on the security cameras or heard from someone that Callie's friend was here. "What the hell are you doing at this event?" he demanded, storming toward us. I stood between him and Vincent, calm as stone. "I'm here to give Callie a voice, the voice you took away from her." Quinn's eyes narrowed. "Callie made her choice. She couldn't handle the real world, so she took the coward's way out. That's not our fault." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even now, even after everything, he blamed her for what they did. "She reported sexual assault," I said through gritted teeth. "And you buried it. You chose a predator over a victim because it was easier. Because it was profitable." "We investigated," Quinn snapped. "There was no evidence. just accusations from an emotional woman who couldn't separate fantasy from reality. Vincent nodded along, emboldened by his protector's support. Exactly. Some people can't handle rejection. They make up stories to get revenge. I looked at both of them, these pathetic men who had built their success on the suffering of others. I'm ending what you started, I said quietly. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I was just another emotional woman making empty threats. They had no idea I'd already pulled the trigger. I returned to the ballroom as Vincent took the stage. The lights dimmed and his face appeared on massive screens around the room. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and began his speech about integrity and leadership. True leaders, he said, his voice booming through the sound system, stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. They protect the vulnerable and speak truth to power. The audience nodded along, impressed by his words. If only they knew how empty those words were. I pulled out my phone and opened the app I'd prepared for this moment. One tap would activate everything. Every email, every document, every recording would flood the internet simultaneously. Social media, news outlets, industry publications, everyone would see Vincent's true face at the same time. My finger hovered over the screen as he continued his lies. We must create safe spaces where everyone feels valued and heard, where bad actors are held accountable for their choices. Callie's voice echoed in my memory. I just want it to stop. Tonight, it would stop. I tapped the screen. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Vincent continued his speech. The audience continued applauding. But then phones around the room began buzzing. Soft at first, then louder as more notifications arrived. I watched faces change as people read their messages. Confusion, shock, horror. Whispers spread through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Someone gasped loud enough for everyone to hear. Then another. The clapping died away as hundreds of people discovered the truth about the man on stage. Vincent noticed the shift but didn't understand it yet. He tried to continue his speech, but his voice cracked as he saw people staring at their phones instead of listening to him. The screens around the room flickered. Then Callie's face appeared, her employee photo, young and hopeful and trusting. Vincent's speech was replaced by her voice, reading from the harassment complaint that had been buried for years. On March 15th, Vincent Cole cornered me in the supply room during the Harrison project deadline. Callie's voice said clearly through the sound system. When I tried to leave, he blocked the door. He touched me without consent and made explicit comments about my body. The ballroom fell silent, except for Callie's voice, finally being heard. Vincent stumbled backward from the microphone, his face white with terror. Security moved toward the stage, but they were too late. The evidence was everywhere now. On every phone, every laptop, every screen in the building. Photos of Vincent at company parties, his hands on unwilling women. Audio recordings of his crude comments about female employees. Screenshots of messages where he bragged about his conquests to other executives. And through it all, Callie's voice continued reading her complaint, describing in heartbreaking detail what he had done to her and how the system had failed her. I am reporting this incident because I believe in doing the right thing, her voice said. I trust that my company will protect me and hold Mr. Cole accountable for his actions. The screen showed her resignation letter next, stained with tears, followed by news articles about her death. The timeline was clear: assault, cover-up, suicide. Cause and effect laid bare for everyone to see. Vincent tried to run, but reporters blocked his path, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in his face. Sponsors yanked their banners from the walls. Board members demanded answers. His wife stood frozen in shock, staring at the husband she thought she knew. For the first time in his life, Vincent Cole looked small and powerless. Quinn pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with rage and panic. His phone was ringing non-stop. Board members, investors, journalists, all demanding explanations for the cover-up his signature had approved. You destroyed everything, he snarled at me, his voice barely controlled. Callie destroyed nothing, I replied calmly. She reported a crime. You chose to bury it. Vincent chose to commit it. I just chose to tell the truth. Security tried to escort Vincent from the building, but the crowd of reporters followed them. Flash photography lit up the night like lightning. His face would be on every front page tomorrow alongside Callie's story and the evidence of his crimes. Quinn's phone rang again. This time he answered, his voice shaking. Yes, I understand the board's concerns. No, I wasn't aware this evidence existed. Yes, I'll submit my resignation in the morning. He hung up and stared at me with pure hatred. I hope you're satisfied. You've destroyed good men over one woman's lies. Good men don't cover up sexual assault, I said. And Callie never lied. You just chose not to believe her because it was inconvenient. The empire they'd built on silence and intimidation was crumbling in real time, and everyone could see it happening. I walked outside into the cool night air, leaving the chaos behind. The story was already spreading across social media, news websites, industry blogs. Justice for Callie was trending. Callie's photo appeared on screens around the world. No longer a forgotten victim, but a symbol of courage. My phone buzzed with messages from journalists wanting interviews, from other women sharing their own stories of harassment and cover-ups, from advocates thanking me for speaking truth to power. But the message that mattered most was from Callie's sister. Thank you for giving her a voice. She would be so proud. I stood on the sidewalk, watching police cars arrive at the hotel, watching Vincent's world collapse through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. His power was gone. Quinn would resign in disgrace. Angie would be investigated for her role in the cover-up. Everyone who had silenced Callie would face consequences they had avoided for too long. I pulled out my phone and played Callie's last voicemail one more time. But this time, instead of sadness, I felt peace. Your story is finally being told, I whispered to her memory. Everyone knows your name now. The fallout was swift and devastating. By morning, Vincent's company had suspended him pending investigation. By afternoon, multiple women had come forward with similar stories, emboldened by Callie's courage and my evidence. Quinn's resignation was accepted immediately, along with Angie's. The entire executive team that had enabled the cover-up was swept clean in a matter of hours. Law enforcement opened investigations into both the original assault and the systematic cover-up that followed. Prosecutors talked about charges ranging from sexual assault to obstruction of justice to conspiracy. I watched it all unfold from my small apartment, finally allowing myself to rest. For years I had carried Callie's pain, her anger, her need for justice. Now that weight was lifted, shared by thousands of people who had heard her story and demanded change. The media called me a whistleblower, a hero, an advocate for justice. But I knew the truth was simpler. I was a friend who refused to let Callie be forgotten. Vincent's face appeared on the news that night, being led away in handcuffs. The man who had once seemed untouchable was just another criminal facing the consequences of his actions. Callie's face appeared too, but not as a victim anymore. As a brave woman who had tried to do the right thing. I received a call from Callie's parents. Through tears, they thanked me for fighting when they couldn't, for carrying their daughter's voice when she could no longer speak for herself. She talked about you all the time, her mother said. Said you were the strongest person she knew. Now, we understand why. I visited Callie's grave for the first time since the funeral. Her headstone was covered with flowers from strangers who had heard her story. Messages of support, of solidarity, of love. I knelt beside her grave and finally let myself cry. Not from sadness anymore, but from relief, from completion, from the knowledge that her death had not been in vain. It's over, I whispered to the stone. Everyone knows the truth now. Vincent can never hurt anyone else. Quinn can never silence another victim. Angie can never dismiss another complaint. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, I could almost hear Callie's voice carried on the breeze. Not the broken, defeated voice from her final days, but the strong, determined voice I remembered from before they destroyed her. Thank you, it seemed to say. Thank you for not letting them win. I started a foundation in Callie's name, funded by the settlement money from lawsuits against Vincent's company. We provide legal support for harassment victims, media training for survivors who want to tell their stories, and protection for whistleblowers who risk everything to expose the truth. Every morning, I wake up knowing that Callie's story is still helping people. Women who are afraid to speak up now have resources and support. Companies that once buried complaints now face real consequences. Predators who thought they were untouchable discover that justice delayed is not justice denied. Vincent was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Quinn was found guilty of obstruction of justice and corporate fraud. Angie was banned from working in human resources ever again. Their victims, Callie and the others who came forward, were finally believed, finally validated, finally given justice. I keep Callie's photo on my desk at the foundation, her smile reminding me why this work matters. Not for revenge, but for the simple truth that everyone deserves to be heard, believed, and protected. Sometimes at night, when the office is quiet, I talk to her picture like she's still here. We did it, I tell her. We made sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. We made sure your voice was heard. And in the silence that follows, I swear I can hear her answer. I knew you would. I always knew you were strong enough for both of us.